A few years ago I picked this second-hand Technics SU-3500 amplifier up on eBay for a pretty reasonable price. It's in lovely condition and such a nice looking amplifier. And not only that, and a really nice sounding amplifier. Got quite a good cult following actually, this amplifier. This amplifier has not had an awful lot of use. It's sort of been on show in my bedroom, not actually doing a lot, and I have powered it up a couple of times and it works fine. This is the amplifier I replaced the power supply capacitors in, I don't know if you remember, and one of the capacitors was bulging and I replaced the capacitors, but it was just the power supply, just the smoothing capacitors on the input. It originally had 10,000 microfarad at 63 volts, and I think I replaced them with 18,000 at 63, basically because they're the same size. This amplifier is from the 70s, probably about 75, 76. And as I say, it's in lovely condition. And I just think now it deserves a recap. Basically, the internals of the unit are pretty good, but the capacitors are coming on 40 years old. And it's due for a bit of TLC, I think. It seems a shame to neglect this amplifier because I plan on keeping this. And I would recommend anyone looking for a classic amplifier. These are, you could probably pick one of these up for sort of 150, 200 pounds in the UK. They're not that common, but I think they're a real sleeper of an amplifier. And basically this video is going to be about, or this part of the video is going to be about what I need to do, but this section of this series of videos, should I say, is going to be about recapping the amplifier and hoping that we get some good results afterward. Okay, just pop the hood off and let's have a look inside. So really nicely laid out design of an amplifier, really clean, obvious where everything is. And I'll run through quickly to show you what we've got. Obviously we've got main input transformer here, the main filtering capacitors which are replaced, protection relay to the left down here, and then we've got the tone control amplifiers left and right, or equalization amplifiers. Now they are independent, so it's actually got independent left-right amplifiers. So it's keeping all the audio separate, which is always good for stereo separation and things like that. And if we come around the other side here, you can see various filter networks for low and high pass filters. These are the capacitors we're replacing. Now I've actually been through my stock of decent quality capacitors and found all the capacitors I need, bar a couple of non-polarized electrolytics of 47 UF. Now I know you can stick to capacitors in series, but that always looks a bit of a bodge. I want to make this look a decent job. I don't want it looks like it's been thrown together half-heartedly. Down here is a separate preamplifier. Let's get out of the light. This separate preamplifier down here, where these two trimmer pots feed the preamplifier, and there's a separate regulated 40 volt supply that feeds the preamplifier and phono stage at the back there. And you can see it's though it's got quite a few electrolytics in it, it's not absolutely crammed with electrolytics like a lot of the amplifiers are of the day. So it shouldn't be too hard to work on with a bit of luck. And here you see obviously the power amplifier stages, a nice solid TO3 devices screwed to a big chunky heatsink. Pretty capable little amplifier. I think it's only rated about 40 watts, but it does better than that. It's pushing close on 50-55 watts RMS into 8 ohms, I think. I did do a power test. I'll have to search the video out and put a link to which video it was. You can see here there's that blue electrolytic at the center screen, and to the left you see that square rectangular capacitor. Now I replaced that, and that's a polyester capacitor. That's the input for the preamplifier, so it's a DC block. The capacitors that were in there were a little bit weak, so I replaced them with some polyesters. And that's that's a plan for a lot of these capacitors in here. If I can get away with using a polyester capacitor, I will replace the electrolytics with polyester. There are a couple of, I think, 4.7s and 0.47s. Obviously in those days these sort of capacitors weren't available, but I can ditch any electrolytic that I can and replace it with a better quality polyester. That's what I will do. It's a shame actually, because you can actually get ceramic capacitors of this sort of size to fit in perfectly, but ceramic capacitors are generally thought of as a no-no in an audio amplifier because they are microphonic, and basically the capacitance changes with different frequencies. We can't think of the term what that means, but basically the capacitance is different at a different frequency, and we want a flat response. So a polyester capacitor like this little Wilmer or Welmer or Wilmer, whatever they are, capacitor down the side here. You can zoom in to see it. Here it is. Yeah, 2.2 microfarad. They're great, totally reliable, never dry up, so shouldn't have any problem at all. Couple of interesting notes on this amplifier. Just run around the back so you can see. All the higher quality amplifiers, they got a split pre-power amplifier, so you can basically run this as a pre-amplifier, or you can actually just use it as a power amplifier. When you've got the links in, it just joins the two together. So that those joining links basically join the power amplifier to the pre-amplifier. That's all that does. And also it's got different inputs for the phono input. It's got two phono inputs, and it's got different matching adjustments for the phono, so you can actually alter the adjustment of the phono. So we've got 25k, 50k and 100k input impedance. So that's quite a nice. It's all moving magnet, no moving coil inputs. And the switches here you see stereo or stereo reverse, left and right, which basically means mono, left info only, right information only. And then on the front you've got high pass, low pass, loudness. Loudness control only does the bass boost on this amplifier, it doesn't lift the treble as well. Tone defeat, two sets of speakers, and the protection relay is the one thing that's slightly unique on these amplifiers. Whereas you're used to a protection relay on an amplifier, you switch it on and wait for the relay to click. This is actually more of a sort of power isolator. So what it does is when you switch it on, this relay, you should never hear the relay click in this. So you switch it on, it will come on like a normal amplifier. But if the monitoring circuit detects a DC offset on the output stage, what it does is it breaks the power supply, which is, in theory, actually it's a better idea. It protects your speakers, but it also protects the amplifier. So if you've got high DC offset, it turns the supply off to the amplifier. So I don't know why they never really stuck with that idea. But yes, that's what this relay does. So if you buy one of these and you think the relay protection circuit is either you've never heard it click, that's correct. You shouldn't hear it click, and this is a problem. And likewise, if you've got no sound, you can't get any sound out of the speakers, and you hear a click when you turn the amplifier on, it's a good chance the protection circuit has activated for some reason or another. Around the other side, we've got the fuses for the various preamplifiers and speaker protection. I think speaker protection fuses on the back actually. So these are supply lines for the power amplifier and preamplifiers and various other pieces, auxiliary supplies. As you see, there's a regulator down there, that TO3 regulator hiding behind the transformer and the fuses. And that's our phono input stage there, all shielded. So it's a really nicely laid out, and it's not a cheap amplifier in its day, so it deserves a bit of TLC because it's in such nice condition. So this is part one, assessing what we're going to have to do. It shouldn't be too hard. I'm going to start going through all, but first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to photograph this and then mark. We can see clearly, or most of the capacitors are quite clearly marked where the polarity of them is, but I need to just go through. So if I take a capacitor out and it's not marked on the board, I know which way I'm going to put it back in. So this is the first part, and hopefully the second part will be starting to change the capacitors.